All right, welcome back to the PricePlow Podcast. This is episode 183, and we are super excited to have Raza Bashir here of Iovate, you might better known as MuscleTech. So, Raza, you've been on our show a couple times, as recently as the recent GNC commercial show. We've been really excited to really chat with you about a lot of things happening at MuscleTech. There's been a lot of things happening recently we've talked about on Instagram and other platforms. But today we want to talk a lot about quality, excellence, quality control, recent movement at MuscleTech and Iovate, and kind of where you guys are going, because there is a big schedule over the next year. So welcome back to the show. If you want to give like a quick introduction on who you are and how you got here, because we will have some new viewers, and then we can get into things.
You bet. So Ben and Mike, always love to be here. Thanks for having me. Here at the Iovate MuscleTech headquarters, in the lab, Chief Innovation Officer over here. So I oversee everything from formulations, product development, flavor, all the way to the commercialization strategy around our products. And I've been doing this for nearly 20 years now. Love the industry, passionate about the industry, and whenever I can kind of get out here, talk shop, and explain what we've been working on and what the plans are for the future, I'd love to be featured. And so thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, of course. One of my favorite things about you, Raza, is that you have produced so many like awesome things that people have loved over the years, like some really legendary products, but you're also just very relatable. Like when I see you at plenty of shows with other people, like you and I hang around like other businesses all the time, and you're just part of the community. Like you're just like a pillar of the community that we always enjoy being around. So I'm excited to talk about like what you actually do today, because I feel like so often, like if people don't know listening to this, like Raza and I have a little bit of a tradition where like at ISSN we go around to all the different posters and like just like question people and have fun in the community. But you've created some pretty incredible products at MuscleTech, so I'm excited to chat about what you've done and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, and not only that, you're in so many countries and you're manufacturing in so many countries. Like I consider MuscleTech, once Eric started, your marketing team started mailing us stuff from other factories in other countries, flavors that we don't even get to have in America, you realize how massive an operation this is. And it's clear that you take the quality side extraordinarily seriously. So I want to hear like how you do all that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for the kind words. It's like as we're talking, like I smile because I'm like, look, we're in the best industry. Like when I think about the people that are in this, it's most of us started it because we loved it, right? Like it was like we loved training. We all felt it was really important to have a great routine where you're training hard, had the right nutrition, had the right supplements, and we lived that. I get to collaborate. I got the best job, really. I really got the best job because I get to collaborate, whether it's collaborators internally or suppliers or even, teams like yourself. I just love the opportunity. And, with that also comes with a lot of responsibility. So like in my role, starting with formulations, when I first got into this industry, I started, majority of my time was on the formulation side of things. And that's still part of my favorite job, of the day. So I consider myself sort of like the master formulator here, but I've got great people, great teams. We have dozens of people in our R&D, packaging, as well as on our quality side of team. And it's like that end-to-end expertise and that end-to-end sort of oversight, which which I'd like to emphasize really does make a difference, in the way that we approach products, like the overall craftsmanship, but also even just the overall quality assurance around our products.
Yeah. I always remind people, we get a lot of comments about like legacy companies, and sometimes like some of the more niche consumers kind of doubt legacy companies when it comes to quality. But I always try to remind people that you don't get to the distribution level of Iovate or MuscleTech without dotting literally every single I and crossing every single T. Like when you get to that level of notoriety, there is so much more oversight on what you're doing. When you're crossing international borders, there's so much more like oversight again on what you're doing. That one of the cool things about working with you guys is I think anytime we've ever asked a question about quality, you guys have provided us with testing extremely quickly. We've seen multiple different times with different platforms, like either chewable creatines or powders, where you guys have provided us testing very straight up, like this is what we do. This is the quality you can expect.
Right. Yeah, and I think you got to go back to your core values. So for us, it's like it was always about bringing the most leading edge supplements to market, that truly worked, had the efficacy, but it was also that trust and transparency. that was always really important and extremely important to this day. And to your point, earlier on, where you might even have some new viewers, it's like we've got this great 30-year legacy. We're in 140 different countries. But it started, so we have all the more reason to want to do it right? When you get to that certain level. But that was always part of the core value, right? It was like, that is the difference maker, right? This is not just to sell one bottle, right? It's to consistently, sell great product that people are going to get great results from. And that means third-party testing. So we got rigorous audits that we do with all our partners. So we ensure they have the right certifications, really meet or exceed, the CGMP requirements. And then we go and do the additional third-party testing. So just, our consumers can always be assured, right? They're going to get what it says on the bottle.
Yeah. Can we ask, like, you can ballpark it, but like, how many contract manufacturers do you work with, like, across the globe?
So, oh my man, it is, last time I did an official count, it was around 28. But listen, it changes considerably. Now, part of it comes to different forms and format. And then, of course, what you need to do is, with really great partners, you typically, just to ensure like the ideal service, you have a primary and a secondary as well. So you might have, two manufacturers working on the same products. One's getting a certain percentage of the volume versus the other. But many, and there's many that, we've onboarded and worked, like when we were doing certain formats that we're not doing today. So, for example, we're not like in the protein bar space right now, but, we've had, co-mans for that as well.
So when you bring on a new manufacturer, I assume there's a pretty rigorous qualification to even start, right?
Oh, yeah. Really rigorous audits, both virtual, then going to see them, assessing it, meeting the teams, looking at the type of products that they do. It's quite extensive before we kind of bring them on board, just to make sure that, and listen, it's not necessarily the size of the manufacturer as much as the quality of the operation. So we're happy to grow with a partner if they're doing it right and they have the same vision. And what we've seen is over the years that we've grown with, a tremendous amount of manufacturers because they just had really good quality processes in place.
Yeah, I read this really great LinkedIn post the other day that growing pains it's not like you don't find new things. You're just exposing issues in SOPs that always existed. Once you scale up, you find those issues. And so a lot of time, like we spend a lot of time visiting manufacturers, and then those manufacturers or brands like to kind of like get linked up with them and each other. And there's always a lot of questions like, well, what's the MOQ? Like what's the possibility? What's the scale they could possibly go to? Like obviously MuscleTech produces large lot sizes. So if we were to bring you guys to a smaller place, that might be a strain. But I like the idea of what you're mentioning here, that like it's not so much the scale of what they can do, it's the SOP and how well they can adhere to that when the scale increases, right?
Right, exactly. And, for most co-manufacturers, like they have the opportunity to add additional lines so they can get there, right? And they can expand in time. So, you give them the opportunity to test, trial, and then for us too, although we have significant volume and we can get to that volume, sometimes when we're launching a first product, you might do a test and learn, right? You might start with a smaller run, and you give it to some of those new sort of hungry partners, but again, with all the right, quality processes.
What do you consider a smaller run in MuscleTech land?
Well, so it's interesting you say that because, it can be anywhere, again, because you want to test new flavors. It could be something like, 2,500 units, right? It just kind of depends. Now, I would like the opportunity, even in some cases, like, what we talked about internally, even sometimes running smaller, which gives us then the ability to launch more kind of different. Again, we're always innovating here, right? The job's never done. It's like, what's next? And sometimes you got to be selective about what you scale. So I could see us also doing some smaller runs in time.
It also has to do with channel, right? Like if you're doing a GNC launch, like there's 3,000 stores across America, and you have to get each one like a couple units, and then you have to have a backup for when they want to reorder. Like that's just built in volume. But if you're doing like a direct to consumer launch, something like your Dissolution product where you're not doing a nationwide rollout, you might be able to do a smaller run.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. And that worked really well. We did do a smaller run. on that. I think we went closer to like 1,000 on the first run, but it sold out real fast.
Yeah,
like extremely fast.
It creates scarcity, which is really fun for consumers because then I get 20 comments a day about when is Dilution coming back.
Right.
MuscleTech. Yeah.
And the amount of messages I got on that too, right? Just like, when is it back in stock? So sometimes you got to place your bets, right? It's like you start small. I was always a firm believer in that concept. And I know we're going to get more into that, but sometimes you don't always know. And you got to kind of trial out and take some risks. And if you sell it a little sooner, hey, to your point, Ben, like scarcity is also a good thing in the short term.
So how much of this are you bench sampling behind you and then sending out for scale up at a contract manufacturer?
So great question. We test everything, absolutely everything. So again, it comes to that end-to-end expertise. We have all the expertise in-house. So we mix up everything. We mix everything in-house. We've got everything from Y blenders, encapsulators, every single raw material and flavor comes here. We formulate it in-house. We test it, trial and error. Then we go to our other product development lab where we do sensor evaluations against a sort of competitive benchmark of some kind that we select. And then based on that, we'll either improve the flavor and we'll also get people in the gym. So not only are we testing it, again, we test everything. We're also giving it to, a lot of the passionate, people in this building that want to trial, and it gives us really good feedback and insight.
Can I ask a quiz question? We have like a rolling poll on this podcast of different people weighing in on a very niche specific issue.
Okay.
Do you prefer paddle blenders or ribbon blenders? This is like a really heated conversation that's happened on multiple podcasts.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question. I can't say I have like a strong preference. I got more experience seeing a lot of our partners using ribbon blenders with success. I think I might be swayed one way or the other, but I think I've just seen it in use more.
That's so funny that you're like kind of a neutral person. This all started at NutriBlends, where they had a really strong opinion, and then I never thought much of it because coming up at NutriBio, we had like bucket blenders that just flipped, and then we had a giant ribbon blender for protein, but we never did inclusions. And the advent of inclusions changed a lot of things for blending because you don't want to crush that. Which is kind of interesting. So you're the first neutral person on that.
Am I neutral? Well, that probably goes on to say, so again, we do everything in-house up until the actual manufacturing. So then we do a tech transfer, and I can see how manufacturers would be a little more passionate about that.
I think you're just like a reasonable take of like for different applications, there's different needs.
That's what it always comes down to. Like it's hard to find a one size fits all for many things.
So a question, like getting back to when you are auditing manufacturers, taking a backwards approach, what are some of the common ways someone can actually get disqualified? Do you have any things that you've seen you're just like, nope, we're out kind of situations?
So definitely, and we'll have specific people from our quality team who are literally trained in doing audits. Like that is the point where they will audit. They're so good at auditing that if they needed to audit our business, they could do that extremely well and prepare us for, government audits. So we will always have, so it would never be myself. You'd always have a specific person who's got that experience that does it. And they're going to be they're really tough on our business manufacturers. So there's some things that, they'll say, hey, you've definitely, there's too much powder on the line. For example, we need to do something about this, right? There's just too much in the air. And those are things that we'd like to see corrected, pretty quickly. But then there's just things, if there's really concerns around safety or even sort of like hygiene and cleanliness, like some of those things just won't fly. Even safety, right? Like we just see some things that people on the line are doing that, us even as consumers would not want that in our bottle. Like you never know. Like things can end up in a bottle, sometimes without the right oversight. So it's hard to pinpoint anything specific thing, but I would say anything that would either we feel from just an overall hygiene and like that's just that wouldn't fly.
Gotcha. Yeah. We were at one place one time where there's literally powder everywhere, and I was thinking to myself, I don't think this is, at least it's not efficient, if nothing else. I'm not sure how much you're actually losing, but sometimes, and of course, some ingredients are just more floury and dusty than others. But once in a while, it's almost as if like the fill process is not efficient enough, or there's a quality issue and you don't even know what it is. But when it's so filthy that you're slipping on ingredients on the floor, I just, it feels wasteful to me. So
yeah, totally. And then the other thing is just like, so you're almost commenting on like the airflow, if they don't have the right, even like the hoods and, for controlling for that. The other thing is just extreme temperatures. Like if for some reason, and of course, by the way, back to hygiene, like you see a lot of rodents. So like if there's rodents there, right, that's a big red flag, like without saying. But even moisture, right? If you're just seeing just a lack of control, and it's more for like concern for our product, right? Just like it withstanding its shelf life.
I have a really specific one that I call out when I see it, and everyone's always like, "Oh, yeah, that was just like totally a mistake, just that one time," and I never believe in it. Wooden pallets in the clean room. Because wooden pallets can bring pests and all sorts of different stuff. Like you should have plastic or metal pallets, but it happens all the time. I don't know. It's almost like normal at this point.
Right. It's. I mean, you do got to get to your partners pretty regularly, just to see. But then eventually, once you start using it, the ones which are great, and they'll improve. They'll always improve over time too when you kind of point things out.
How much qualification of ingredients do you do? Do you ever go to China and like check, or like India and check the manufacturing of your ingredients?
So I've always wanted to do. This place always keeps me so busy that I haven't been able to go out there. But we've leveraged partners to help us on that front, and typically I've gotten to know our suppliers really, really well. So then you get that. You get that confidence. So of course we're assessing all the technical documentation. We have them send it here. So what we do, it doesn't matter who the supplier is. So in addition to them testing, providing C of A's, and then ahead of our manufacturer testing the raw material, when we're onboarding a raw material, we're going to test it. So we're going to send it to a third party, validate all the ingredient specification and C of A, and then it's officially approved to be used in our product. So we've got this.
In like 2017, I got an argument with Mike McCandless in the bodyblue.com forums, which I think everyone did. But he reminded, I mean, it's a great point. There's no like test to prove when amino acids are fermented vegan. Like it's either leucine or it's not leucine. You can't see if it's, from plant or not. And he was always kind of saying like, unless you're going to China and checking like the source of your amino acids, you can't actually prove that they're vegan, which it's always an interesting thing. But like to your point, like actually having relationships with suppliers is part of that. And then like you can always leverage partners and auditors overseas if you need to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, everything is going to come from, a majority of things are going to come from India and China, just a lot of the manufacturing, especially botanicals and those things of that nature. And it comes down to that just rigorous sort of testing. Make sure they have all the right certifications as well, in addition. And then when you build that confidence with them, you build that relationship, then you just, it almost ends up just being sort of a well-oiled machine, right? You just keep working on the next ingredients.
And this also becomes a selling point for branded or patented or trademarked goods, because then there's, a pretty good well-known supply chain that they're regularly pulling through. Like we did a podcast with Creatine a couple months back, and kind of realizing like their patent says 99.9% pure. Like that's something that they have to adhere to. And one of the cool things about having a quality department as robust as yours is that you can order ingredients and like really check them very regularly and have a spec that you stick to and reject anything else. But for a lot of people, having a branded good helps them kind of like know that there's a spec that someone else is checking as well.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of confidence around that. We've even gone so far where we've worked with manufacturers, so they may have branded ingredients, but we've created ingredients through them because we knew they're doing such a good job, right? So we'll get an ingredient made, get it to a specific standardization just based on science that and benefits that we think you can get from just focusing on maybe certain actives and that you have analytical sort of extract ratios or specific standardization set up for.
Does this kind of go back to your legendary Lukic and Gakic type stuff?
This goes back to not specifically to those ones, but You know, there's a few along the way. You know, I'll give you an example. Like when we created, I'm trying to actually make sure I get the right. When was the first time we used it? It might have been Pumped 8, if you guys remember that one. So, for example, the red spinach extract in there. I had that material created, made and standardized for specific nitrates, just based on all the work that we were doing behind the scenes, and it was just phenomenal. It was phenomenal for blood flow, but what I was finding at the time, I was playing a lot of soccer, and I'm not great with endurance, so I'm more of a sprinter, just naturally, more type 2 muscle fibers. So when something works on endurance, I notice it. I'm definitely a responder to it, and I just started getting phenomenal results. So we started putting it in, and then we ended up putting it in Shatter and a few other products, along the way.
Interesting. I, after this, want to hear all about your endurance product thoughts, because that is a category that, like, I think very rarely gets a lot of love.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of possibilities and opportunities there. There are always like people that like kind of like argue about like if your set is over or under 60 seconds, how much it matters and stuff. But I'm very curious about that after you get through some topics.
Sure.
Yeah. I was going through all the products we've ever seen from MuscleTech, which is a lot of them, to say the least, because a lot of them are meant for international. If they end up back in the US or we're monitoring a website, we capture it eventually. So you had a couple, one was MuscleTech Black Onyx Shatter Non-Stimulant Pumped 8, and then there was also the Shatter Pre-Workout Pumped 8. And so then the tub picture has the SX7. You guys have had so many series here. I don't even know what the SX7 series was, but
so that one started. That was a GNC exclusive.
Okay,
when we launched it.
Yeah, it's so much stuff here. So very cool. I was gonna ask one more thing about the manufacturing side. When you have multiple manufacturers, you said, that are running possibly the same product, how do you ensure the consistency of like flavors, for instance? Or do you have like one manufacturer just run the strawberry watermelon flavor or whatever, and then the other manufacturer run the grape? Or do you send them the actual flavor system and recipe? Like, I'm assuming you're not letting any manufacturers do your flavoring. So are you cool to send everyone the same stuff, or do you have one manufacturer do one specific like SKU? How does it oftentimes work?
Yeah, so typically we will have, it really depends on the volume of a SKU. So let's just go with a chocolate and vanilla, right? Mm-hmm. Like chocolate and vanilla, naturally we sell more than a strawberry. We still sell significantly with strawberry. We really can't just have one because of scale. Like you typically need to, just because given the volume that we're doing, we're really fortunate. A lot of people are buying our proteins. We need 2 manufacturers to do that. And one of the benefits is when we do the flavoring and owning that flavor system is that we can have that same flavor then sent out to various manufacturers. So they're following, our formulation. And then what we do, and we do it right here, literally in the lab that I'm in, we do taste assessments of everything. And it's got to match our gold standard. So typically, now some products, depending on how long we've made it for, it may have less frequent spot checks. And then there's certain products where every single lot, as part of the release criteria, because there's always an inspection. So our quality team's always inspecting every product before it releases. And then my product development team will also do taste assessments. And that's the interesting part about quality. Like, the overall oversight is so important. Not like, of course, meeting label claim, making sure everything's gonna deliver as noted on the supplement facts, and basically hit the dose for all the claims. But the other thing is just the taste experience, that lot to lot consistency. And there's been times where we've had to make tough choices. We try it and we're just like, this doesn't match the gold standard. And those are hard conversations to have, but you do it because there's a certain standard that you expect from your product, and your consumers do, right? All of a sudden they get their product and it starts to taste different. That can be, you could potentially lose a consumer over that, saying they think that's the new, quality going forward.
One of the funniest things I've experienced at NutriBio was like if a source of an ingredient changed, like spec, like from a powder to a crystal, or from a white to a slightly yellow or something, consumers would notice. And I thought that was the most interesting thing, because it's like, we're selling L-histidine. Like, why do you care, like, the consistency of it or whatever? But like, consumers care a lot about that stuff, and so consistency really does matter.
Yeah.
But one of the things that at least I notice with smaller brands that I notice like very quickly is, like, you know, a lot of them love to go and post their like support of like a very specific contract manufacturer, and how they only use this contract manufacturer because they trust them. And that's great. There's a lot of really great contract manufacturers we're partnered with that we, you know, we're mutual friends with a few of them that like we really trust and love. But it shows a lot because like 6 months later, they're out of 3 flavors for, you know, a half of a year because of issues in supply chain or you know, pipeline from the contract manufacturer. And a lot of times it's just a necessary part of scaling is finding multiple manufacturers to make sure you're always in stock.
Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly right. It's, you know, you can simplify things when you're working with less, and of course it adds more complexity. But you know, consumers are, if a product's not in stock, right, they're going to move to something else. They're going to try something else. So, you know, you have to prioritize service, and you have to prioritize that experience, right? That experience is so important. Everything from, you know, making sure the liner, you know, everything from the liner, you know, like there's so many details in terms of a product. And, you know, you just think about if something goes wrong with the liner or the moisture content or any of those different type of things, especially for something like a pre-workout, they're not going to get that same experience. And we don't want to take a chance, you know, not delivering to consumer the highest expectations.
Mm-hmm. So with regards to testing, I know that there's some third-party tests out there that test your stuff as well. Like, you guys are obviously very large, so you're under the scrutiny and everything. So have you gotten any cool things from the Consumer Reports of the world? Because I imagine you're kind of in those. You're in that sphere where you're going to get listed. If you're at Costco, you're probably going to be tested by some large groups.
Yeah. So that does happen, and you know, I did get just recently, I think it was about a week ago, an update of some of our gainers being tested. And
they care about weight gainers.
Yeah, gainers and testing to spec. So and not surprised, but also just proud to kind of see that. So that is going to be, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a report coming out, you know, any day now with respect to that. Again, they just notified us, and you know, we provided a comment because they had tested several brands. So we see that all the time, and that's where you just have to have the data, right? Like, if you're doing the right thing, you're going to have the data, you're going to have an understanding of this. So although we're releasing our products, we have our quality team releasing our product, they're releasing it based on third-party test results. I'll give you an example. Like, just, you know, recently we reported on NitroTech. We reported on our NitroTech test results, and it was protein in particular, right? So some of the most commonly used protein evaluation tools are like, you know, the Keldol, the Dumas, Lyco, just, you know, very, 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 very common, typically measuring nitrogen retention. Mm-hmm. So with our NitroTech product, again, sold in, you know, hundreds of countries, and one of our flagship products, we needed to highlight, just given some of the information out there, and also just to reassure all our consumers globally, hey, this is how this product is formulated. Here's how it tests out. So 3 separate tests from a very large and reputable third-party lab, and we reported on it and shared that information publicly. And with respect to protein, so for example, in that product, typically that product is going to test via those methods somewhere between 35 to 36 and a half ish grams of protein. And the reason being is it's going to capture all nitrogen, and we've added 3 grams of creatine to it. So creatine contributes nitrogen, and that nitrogen is going to go over and above the 30 grams. But all the protein that we claim on the label is always going to be specific to the whey protein in the product. So things like that, you know, we're really transparent and feel it's important to talk about. especially with rising protein prices, right? People are talking about concerns with rising protein prices and, what that could lead to in terms of, people mixing and maybe counting other amino acids to it. And we just needed to get ahead of that, just given, of the steps that we're taking.
Yeah, that's interesting, because back in the day when amino acid spiking was underway, it's tough because the law basically states, and we have a big article from 2014. That's kind of what put me on the map in the industry, discussing that there's not a really great definition of the word protein per the FDA. It's based on these old tests that are just essentially nitrogen tests. So you could add cheaper nitrogen-containing amino acids to the product, and then it looks like it's got enough protein when it's really half of it is taurine or glycine or creatine. Actually, I think has multiple nitrogen molecules in the actual in the atoms in the molecule. So that makes it, the system can be gamed, but at the same time, MuscleTech, for instance, we want the protein and we want the creatine. You want both and everything.
Exactly.
We just want, so you want effectively, you want the 30 grams of protein, like actual dietary protein from whey, milk, dairy, protein. You want that on the label, but you want the nitrogen test to actually go above that, showing that you actually have a bunch of creatine or whatever else you add there. And I guess like testing mass gainers is similar, is even going to be even like sloppier too, because everyone's adding tons of stuff to the weight gainers, and it's tough to know. I'm kind of curious how the bigger organizations are doing the testing, because it's really expensive to actually test for like the bonded amino acids and everything. Nitrogen test is super simple. So you could pay, I could do that for $200, but yeah, searching for each individual amino acid to really like round out the profile, that's a little bit more complicated, but that's kind of how it works. So we want your 30 grams. So MuscleTech has 30 grams on the label of actual protein?
Exactly.
Okay. So we want 30 grams of actual protein, but we want the nitrogen test to be above. And that's kind of like where you're landing.
Exactly. Yeah. You're going to see it above 35 grams, for example, that's on awesome. That. And, back to your comment around, so 2014, so that was the year that I recall we're still part of the American Herbal Product Association. So we're part of this really large trade group. I'm part of the board of trustees there. But, going back to 2014, at the time, as part of the Sports Nutrition Committee, we were talking about this topic. We were talking about the importance of the definition of protein, and we formed the Protein Working Committee. So it was myself and, it was Dr. Robert Wildman and maybe a couple of others. And we literally came up with the definition of what, and this wasn't, it was basically regulatory guidance for the industry, saying, okay, we understand what this should be, but as leaders in this space, we believe protein, right, should be amino acids bonded. Right, so it should be peptide bonded amino acids and not just counting nitrogen content. So we established that. Other trade groups were aligned, like CRN, and that guidance was kind of set forth. So that really should be in the rear view. I know folks can still be concerned, and my feedback would be look to the reputable companies that have been selling protein for years, that are part of those trade groups. Again, if people have concerns, that are part of those trade groups, and then ensure you're buying it from, qualified retailers, and, even on Amazon, for example, buy it direct from the brand, when you can, versus all those little things. I think it's going to help consumer confidence.
Yeah. And just to correct myself, creatine has 3 nitrogen molecules on it. So it's basically like 10 to 11% of the mass of a creatine molecule is actual nitrogen. So you can really use that to game the system if you're not doing things properly.
Right.
And we obviously love creatine and everything here. It's just it's cheaper than actual dairy whey protein. So that's what was happening. In my opinion, like a company like MuscleTech or Cellucor, the C4 whey and everything, these companies, I call it too big to get sued. Like you're too big to want to get messed with in terms of it's not worth, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. If you're going to do something stupid like that, it's not I don't know. It would just not be worth the reputation. It wouldn't be worth like the class action. I just don't think it makes sense just to go with the large brands. There's also other third-party tests, and there's some labels that that
Yeah.
you can get as well for like the drug tested athletes, all that stuff. Then it's made in a pretty good manufacturer. But overall, like you guys are just too big and successful to mess around, in my opinion. So
Yeah, like you're right. There's obviously we've got more, organizations like us have more to lose. It's just that type of, first of all, it's not compliant, not the right thing to do. Nobody should do it. And why would you risk just short-term gain, right? People are buying into protein to gain muscle, to recover. Really the way we're looking at it is how do we help consumers and people absorb that protein better, right? We want to make sure it's enjoyable, tastes great, and that's the way we're looking at innovation on that front.
It's led to this kind of like really annoying interpretation where anytime someone sees added amino acids, they're like, oh, this is amino spiked.
Right. Yeah.
There are so many benefits to adding amino acids to a blend that aren't amino spiking.
That's kind of like my regret. And I wrote about this. I was like, way back then, taurine and glycine are great ingredients. I just at the time didn't want them in a protein powder because it was just too much ambiguity of what was actually going on. Looking back, I don't know if there's a way we could have messaged better because we were like using these ingredients all the time in other formulas and everything. We love our taurine, creatine, glycine. And in a way, I do want them in a protein powder now. Like, because I personally, I take collagen because I don't think I get enough glycine in my diet. And I do better with collagen. It would be great to have it like all bundled in one. But I don't know. I think it just, the education got away from us for a second. We had to almost like pull back a little bit and make sure that our whey protein was really whey protein. And if you are adding a creatine to your whey protein, then you do need to go above and beyond and show those tests, in my opinion. Which I'm glad you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. And I think, what's also important and can help consumer confidence and even just the understanding and clarity is also just the transparency, right? Like, avoid proprietary blends in that situation. Like, I think all those little details will also provide more confidence. But of course, nothing enhances confidence like seeing a third-party C of A.
Yeah. Like it or not, that all of that controversy ushered in an era of transparency and education and information, and a lot of people were looking for like simpler formulas at that point. Like, we had a podcast with James Bacuzzi who gave this really fun talk about like the mystery of proprietary blends, and like at that point, it was exciting to go buy like. Look at any MuscleTech product from that time. Like, it was exciting because we didn't all have like PubMed warriors figuring out all of these things that were in the products. It was exciting to see a formula and think, oh, this is going to make me look like Ronnie Coleman, and like times have changed now where like consumers are more educated and more interested in transparency. And I like how MuscleTech's come around now to, again, being forefront on new ingredients, but with the transparency, right? Like Peptide 185 was the first time to have dileucine, but we knew the dosage and the breakdown. Like we always know what we're actually getting now, which is really cool.
Yeah. Well, fun fact for you all and for everyone listening is we started doing, full transparency back in, I want to say it was 2010, circa 2010, and it was for the products I completely remember, it was for our super concentrated series. So we had NeuroCore, NanoStem, the Alpha Test, and HydroxyStem.
I remember NeuroCore.
I like that. Yeah, I like that product.
And it was an amazing era. And in fact, the way we had marketed it at the time, and I got to give kudos to the team that was on it. It was like, I want the truth, right, for the consumers, because there were just a lot of things going on at that time, and I loved it because it put the science on the forefront, right, and that transparency. So it was like fully disclosing, the citrulline dose, the beta alanine dose, everything back then, creating these formulas that were really, really efficacious, didn't have to be over-engineered or appear to be overly engineered with like the kitchen sink of just many, many ingredients to sort of trend capture. So it goes back to those days, but of course, with Muscle Peptide 185, we're so focused on bringing cutting edge research to market and first and fully disclosed.
Awesome. Definitely been some good changes.
Indeed.
I personally, I like a good high stem, small micro scoop pre-workout once in a while for the cardio activities. So everything we get sent is like 8 grams of citrulline. Like, that's great, get some good blood flow, but when your legs are no longer moving. Oh yeah, you guys are going to talk about the endurance stuff. I don't know if you want to do that or move on. We got some business things to talk about as well, but
I'm going to take that one off. I'll take that offline with Raza later.
Oh, okay. I could talk pre-workout stuff all day long, of course. That's why we're here. But okay, cool. Well, anything else on the quality side? Like, yeah, just happy what you're doing, and just happy that NitroTech. I don't know. You've been putting creatine in the protein powders for like 25 years. So glad you didn't stop when all that went down, because sometimes the legacy is more important than a couple bumps in the road. And yeah, I don't know. So yeah, appreciate that you do the third-party testing. That's really what we need on that kind of product.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, there's obviously been some business transition stuff going on, and I'm not sure how to best even explain it, because this is I guess that's why it's your job to explain it. So MuscleTech's going through some transitions and everything, and there have been some questions. It's pretty clear you're still putting new stuff out. In fact, our system just caught those new, and back from the GNC conference, you teased the EFF'N series, and our system just captured them at gnc.com. So those are available now. So you're clearly putting more stuff out, and you seem to have a pipeline, even though we've talked a lot about the past. So kind of give us the layout of what's going on right now at MuscleTech and what's the path forward and everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I'll say is 30 years. 30 years we've been here. We're not going anywhere. From our commitment to our customers, our consumers, our suppliers, and all our business partners is definitely not changing. So we're here, and you're going to see that as we go forward, we're probably going to emerge as sort of this leaner, more agile type of business focused on innovation. And I mean, you're going to see our business, our teams at Olympia showcasing this new innovation. You're going to see us at Dubai Muscle Show showcasing innovation and meeting with our partners. And then, of course, at supply side, working with everybody involved in our supply chain and all those really important high-quality suppliers that we were referring to that are just so important for this business. It's all about growth. It's all about the future, and it's where we take it from here. And I'd say innovation is just as important to us now as it will be.
Yeah, it seems like when there is a restructuring that sometimes happens, the concern is that some companies can just lean on the legacy stuff and then dump the innovation and just kind of ride the tail for a little while with just selling NitroTech or something like that. It doesn't seem like that's what you're going to do, at least with the products that we're seeing that are coming out and all the stuff that you've been talking about previously with us. So I'm happy about that. I guess with some of the more innovative stuff that you've done, Peptide 185, EuphoriQ, even over the last couple of years, have the sales been good with the EuphoriQ in order to like push innovation to make sure that innovation stays, because EuphoriQ was the first paraxanthine based pre-workout. So
yeah,
has that been a win?
It's so EuphoriQ was one of those projects. And there's so many that I'm really proud of what we've been able to do as a business. But EuphoriQ in particular, there was something really special there because it was completely differentiated from all the caffeinated pre-workouts out there. We were trying to do something different. Anytime you're doing something different, there's risk. You're going to a more niche group. And that's part of the innovation process as well. I think everything, there's an innovation curve to everything. And over time, things scale. So when you launch something that breakthrough, you're typically focusing on sort of the more innovative, early adopter type of consumers, right? Or just who want to try something different. They've heard about it. They get excited and want to experiment. And that's what we started with EuphoriQ. So it's got, that paraxanthine infinity in there, and people are getting really, really good results. And I think what we've seen, so to answer your question, it is doing well, and it's got more distribution as well. So we're seeing it in more channels. But I think the thing that we really noticed is, and you notice this when you start to do formula iterations as well, is that people start giving you feedback, right? And they start sharing. So there's definitely a subgroup of people that like it. And I think this group that likes it and really understands how special it is are the people that notice how dialed in they get in their workouts when they take it, as opposed to caffeine. It's definitely more sort of cerebral and this enhanced focus effect. And then the other element is those that are training later at night. Again, a lot of people love their stimulants. They're going to have that cutoff time point on when they're going to be taking, I call it that 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine. With paraxanthine, because it has such a shorter half-life, it can be in and out of the system in like 4 hours. So you can take it a lot later. So I think that's kind of we're seeing now is, people who are, it's doing well, it's growing. We want to see it continue to we want to get the word out there more so. And it's part of educating the benefits and how it's differentiated and how it can actually be used in conjunction with other caffeine or other pre-workouts, depending on when you train.
I definitely see V2 EuphoriQ as my favorite version of it. So I like the feedback that you guys took and you developed it further. I mean, the V1 I finished multiple bottles of, but then V2 came out. Or even like the Walmart version of it that was with Boogeyman. Like the different changes that you guys have made have been, I think, right in line with what people are asking for. And for anyone listening at home, I know everyone loves to play formulator in their kitchen, but the fact of the matter is, like, when you have as many impressions as MuscleTech has, like, it's very difficult to make everyone happy. Just before, Mike was talking about how he likes super concentrated pre-workouts for his cardio. Some people love pumps products. I mean, as someone who has created content talking about formulas that has then hit millions of people, I cannot explain to people how many different versions of pre-workouts there are that people want. And it's really hard to make like one product that satisfies all of them. So I think one of the things that we see as companies grow is that they start to see all of the different feedback. They start to see all the different directions that they can go. And the biggest concern that people have is like being forgotten in that, right? Like you guys could definitely just kind of like sit back and sell NitroTech overseas and generate enough revenue to keep paying the team. But you mentioned being leaner going forward. I'm kind of like curious what that effectively means.
I think it just when you leaner in terms of you just have to be more disciplined, so more focused, and that doesn't mean just focused on the legacy products. It means being really focused on excellence and execution. If you launch something, make sure the support's there, the education's there. So I think that's really what I'm getting in terms of how we're going to be focusing our resources.
I think that's the perfect answer, because a lot of people see like, your Glanbias, right? Your Optim Nutritions and stuff like that, or even like Ghost, when they started getting larger partnerships, we were like, they're not going to make stuff for us anymore. And that was the coolest thing about MuscleTech doing EuphoriQ, in my opinion, was that we had like hyper consumers, like people who really knew the space, that were still excited about MuscleTech. It's very rare that you see a company go legacy where they're selling in however many countries you guys are in, like all over the world, but you're still making products that like those niche hyper educated consumers are still actually excited about. That doesn't happen very often. So I'm loving what I'm hearing from you, because it seems like you guys are doubling down on that support for the like, because your customers are not technically consumers. Those are the retail channels, and then the end consumers, like really supporting them and making them happy with the products that you're making. That's not something we hear from legacy very often.
Yeah, no, thanks for that feedback. And it's part of the mindset of, you've always got to be listening to you got to be listening to your customers. You got to be listening absolutely to your consumers. And then you have to you can find consumers all over. I mean, there's consumers in this building, right? Like we're all consumers, right? We're always testing and experimenting, and you kind of got to gather all that feedback. And if you're not adapting and iterating, you're going to be kind of left behind. And, as an organization, when you've been around for 30 years and you're looking to the future, it's always about adapting. And the industry's changed a lot, right? Like what was once, going to the early days was more of the sort of bodybuilding era, transitioned to like that more fitness era. And now we're more in that, lifestyle era, right? And you have to look, so, from an innovation perspective, not only are we thinking about our core consumers and maybe some of the people that want some of the, the harder hitting type of formulations, but also how do you make some of these formulations just easier for people to incorporate into their day and that they want to take throughout the day, whether it's like their training, or even like myself, training or not, when I need to be focused and dialed in, I just want a really good formulation.
Yeah, recently, this is a little bit more in the beverage space, but I think it still applies to sports nutrition. We've done some fun content about like what the brand you choose says about you, and we haven't talked about MuscleTech because you guys don't have an energy drink, so it's like a little bit harder to get to that. We should do like pre-workout what it says about you, but that lifestyle timeline right now, it says a lot about like if you're using EuphoriQ, it says a lot about you as a consumer. Like probably being a little bit more forward thinking about your caffeine source or lack thereof. Really. Yeah. So I like that you guys are focusing on that because you mentioned how many different consumers are. There's ones in your building. There's me and Mike. A lot of people listen to me and Mike for whatever reason. Like you can get a ton of feedback from a ton of different people, and you have to be really careful because if you go on TikTok, you might have the impression that every single pre-workout has to have 12 grams of citrulline and 5 grams of glycerol. Like it's very hard to find like what is the feedback that really represents the consumers that are actually going to purchase your product. Like if you own a gym, you probably shouldn't listen to the meatheads because they're not really the mainstream people that are going to be paying you money. They're like the 20% of the gym that's always going to be there. And if you own a gym, you probably don't want to listen to the cardio bunnies. So when you're running a legacy brand, you really have to listen to consumers who are actually end consumers and not just commenters.
Yeah, that's a good point. You got to be careful of the N of one, right? When someone gives you feedback. So there's you're right. I mean, you can be online, the social chatter, focus groups, and then of course trusted people. But I'll give you another example. All the years formulating, working on stimulants, and trying to find like the sweet spot for pre-workouts without overstimulating and trying to get that, that wider group, and also the people that just weren't taking it they just found it, too hard hitting, or they didn't like the effect after. They liked it while they're training, but not after. So, here in this lab, right, there's so many memories in this lab where I think of, we were experimenting and I was trying, all these different ratios with the team of, caffeine with different adaptogens, different dosages, different amino acids, the theanines, and all these different things. And this is going back literally decades, all this trial and error. And it probably led up to this, the EuphoriQ and the paraxanthine excitement around launching that. But where I'm going with this is there were times where I'd have like, I guess for no lack of a better word, like the super users or like the super stim users, when they would give me positive feedback, I knew I had a problem. It was the opposite. So you get like the 80%, and then all of a sudden I got 2 people. They're like, I loved it. And I was like, oh, hold on a second. Let me just try this. Let me just try this one more time. And I'm like, okay, we can't launch that. It's just,
I know what you mean.
Too hard hitting.
I mean, you ended up with Yohimbe and EuphoriQ V2. I think it's the funniest thing because like we're trying to like lower caffeine dosage, but then we're still giving them this like hit of and it is what people are looking for, right? That is what people are looking for. But very often I had a comment this morning that told me that 6 grams of citrulline is for high school kids, and then if you're an adult, you need more. And I'm like, man, if you can't get a pump off 6 grams of citrulline, like we got to check your heart. Like we got to talk about like blood flow here. Like I totally know what you mean because we are kind of these people, right? Our friends and we most likely have a caffeine problem. Most of us probably have a tolerance to these stimulants, but we're probably a minority in the actual consumer group.
Yep. And then one other like another good example, and this is fairly rare. But like I'm a non-responder to beta-alanine. I just don't experience now I should say non-responder when it starts to get north of like 8 grams, I start to feel it, but I won't feel it. I know my feedback is not, so although I'd be taking these pre-workouts, I would not rely on my feedback on how intense is the tingles.
Yeah, but is that you being a non-responder, or is that 30 years of MuscleTech?
I think in the case, it is actually, it's a non-responder.
Okay.
Element, the stims and stuff, that's probably the 30 years of just tolerance. But no, I'm just a non-responder on that front. But that said, you know how sensitive some people are to that. So you just gotta, look at the wider group and just be careful of the N of 1, even as a formulator.
I've brought this up before. Like, I feel like with smaller brands, I don't always feel beta alanine, but then if I use someone that I know it's made at a quality manufacturer, and I know there's like proper overages, like I'll always feel beta alanine a little bit more from those brands.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. At some point, I want to have someone just toss in a bunch of niacin and just blow them out too. Raza, when's the last time you took a stim break?
Oh.
You don't have to answer.
No, that's not true. I did take one last year for about 30 days.
Nice.
First 3 days were terrible, and then I do. So I'll do that for a little bit. Yeah, maybe, but that's it though. Then I'm back.
Yeah, I did earlier last year, and for me I was okay. I was fine, and I got used to it, and then I was good to go. It's just life isn't as fun without caffeine. That's kind of I've heard some people responded. I made a thread about it, but it was basically like you got to go like 3 to 6 months off, and I was like to really, really capture it. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. Not in this industry. So I like my caffeine, but either way, it is good to do a break once in a while. I'm okay with chronic caffeine usage though. So that's
likewise.
Personally. Yeah. So you have some innovation coming. Like I mentioned, the EFF'N series is now available at gnc.com, which you had teased to us a few episodes back at the end of the GNC conference. So do you want to get into that again, or do you have other things? Because I know peptides is a big thing for you. Flavors of creatine, I think. But yeah, mostly the EFF'N Energy is the new thing that is hot and new right now.
You bet. Let's talk innovation, because we've been busy. We have just over I'd say in Q4, you're going to see a tremendous amount of innovation from us coming. We got innovation in efficacy. We've got innovation in the speed of efficacy in terms of our formulations, and then you're going to see, convenient novel forms like our EFF'N range. So, I'll start with the EFF'N range. It's
and for people listening, it is EFF'N. You have EFF'N hydrate, EFF'N energy, and EFF'N cut.
EFF'N hydrate, EFF'N energy, and EFF'N cut are the first 3 that are launching, and they are going to be exclusive to GNC for launch. So they're gonna be there this month. And the whole concept really came around us working on these effervescent beads that would dissolve in solution and start to create sort of that bubbly experience, right? It's an effervescent, so it starts to taste similar to a carbonated beverage. And we just leaned into that. So EFF'N really is short for effervescent, but obviously it's got sort of an edgy and bold sort of name around it as well. And we just leaned into that, and we went into key categories that we thought people would want to consume more enjoyable forms in that. And you're going to see novel ingredients, novel science. With the EFF'N hydrate, you're getting electrolytes, but you're also, we've got the Sen Active in there for enhanced endurance and performance. In EFF'N cut, so that whole concept, right, is about leaning up, cutting calories, ultimately burning calories, and we've got a new novel metabolism enhancer in there that it helps you burn 3 times the calories. So the key ingredient in that is Theolim, which is derived from a cacao and citra, key lime citrus.
Yeah, it says lime peel extract. We haven't seen lime citrus.
Yeah, so this is first to market. So we're bringing it to market, exclusive novel, something that's kind of been in our pipeline for a few years in terms of the science and the ingredients. So it's got really great data, 2 human clinical studies around its ability to burn calories with and without training, which is really impressive. And then on top of that, there's weight loss and even some data showing its ability to enhance natural GLP-1 within the body. So super interesting stuff around that. So it's just a fun take. We want to make it more enjoyable for people, lean into the flavor, the taste, but not compromise any of the efficacy.
How do you feel about the claim of increasing GLP production on a natural product?
So I think I think you got to. It's hard not to talk about GLP-1, right? When you're getting into weight loss now, and listen, I also formulate for hydroxycut, and we've got our hydroxycut brand out there, and it's one of those things. If you look at what's happening, from a macro trend perspective, and how people are changing their diet and lifestyle, the first thing I'll say is GLP-1. The drugs out there obviously are very, very effective, right? Extremely effective. So they've happened to have gotten a lot of awareness. I think with the GLP-1 type of claim around products, what's interesting is, we were always looking at hunger hormones, right? When you look at the science and data, and it's not just GLP-1. There's GLP-1, there's ghrelin, there's leptin. There's always stuff happening behind the scene and signals. It wasn't that sexy to talk about them before. It was always more like the end result, right? And that's what consumers look for, right? Like, you're trying to cut fat, you're trying to cut weight. And I think just because of that, we're now emphasizing, right? It's part of how some of these ingredients work. But there's definitely, obviously, we're not, in no means are we going to compare these to drugs and the power of a drug, and knowing that GLP-1 signal is going to be, obviously extended and more effective. But nor are we also trying to be that, because there's also a lot of downsides with doing that, right? Telling your body to stop eating, and it's right. It's like, sends a signals to your brain. It's like, stop eating, and then to your gut, stop moving. And those aren't exactly what we want to do. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I think in the drug front, I think the micro dosing is where a lot of people are going to get better effects. Because I thought of this in my head before, earlier on. It's like, okay, these things are working so well, they're working too much. Why not just take smaller doses? But it took some time for people to get around to that, and then you reduce the side effect profile. But there are natural alternatives where we're not. This isn't sledgehammer mode, So as long as we're willing to do that, and there's been other citrus fruits that have these types of claims as well. So Theolim is one that I had not heard of until literally this morning when I looked at the effing cut label. And then alongside that, you got a little bit of N-acetyl tyrosine, 200 milligrams of caffeine anhydrous, and then a chromium, 200 micrograms of chromium from Chromax. So you have a nice little formula that should feel pretty good. I'm kind of curious to try this lime peel extract, though. We always hear about oranges and lemons, but now we get lime. So
it's really it's extremely effective in terms of just, especially I think when you're at like that sort of last 10 pounds that you're trying to cut, you start to see the results pretty quick when you take something like this. When you're burning up to 300 calories more a day, it's like that's like additional, that's almost more effective than a lot of cardio sessions. With that, the other thing I was just thinking about, Ben, just back to your comment. I think if companies are going to make the GLP-1 claim, it's important to know that there's a downstream benefit that has been shown. So what does that mean? So if it's doing that, is there research showing that it did lead to enhancing the metabolism and burning calories? So I think, because what we're going to see is you're going to see naturally an onslaught of companies maybe highlighting that more. And then the first thing I would say is, well, let's now dig into the research and what does that mean for that raw material, right? Is it still having that key effect? So that's what I would say is critical, and that's the way we're looking at it.
I like it's a responsible answer. I think when we start talking about GLP, like a lot of it comes down to like regulatory responsibility, like how much are we willing to say? Yeah. We talked about this. Mike and I talked about this on a podcast last year with Sean Wells when we were talking about dihydroberberine, which does technically increase GLP, and I think you can talk about it. We have to be careful. I am very curious though, because we all always say, like, obviously natural supplements are not going to boost it as much as a drug will, and I think that's like an obvious thing. But when we start talking about microdosing, like, I really want to know what the difference is. But always got to be responsible. Like we said before, a company as large as Iovate or MuscleTech is not going to go out in the middle, let's stick their head out there and risk things over like a GLP claim. But it is interesting. I think most people don't want to do injections. So, a pill that might have a similar effect on a similar pathway, or, a lower effect on the same pathway might be interesting for some people. But I like that you guys are being responsible with it.
Well, yeah, but these aren't pills; these are sachets. Oh. I'm just looking at the serving size. So, are they the little balls, or is it a powder?
Yeah, they're essentially like the little beads. You know what I'm gonna do? Give me a second. I'm gonna go grab them.
Sure. Okay,
Right,
do that, and I'll just jam on the ingredients here on these other products while we do it.
Okay, one second. Let me grab.
And we could cut this if we need to. All right, EFF'N Energy. I got Blue Raz Fizz 20 sachets. And so this one's got a B6 choline. Where's the choline coming from? Oh, cool. This has 200 milligrams of Genius Pure from NMB Nutrition, paired with 225 milligrams of caffeine. I'm going backwards on the label here. 500 milligrams N-acetyl L-tyrosine. So the N-acetylated form of tyrosine must be working better in these pills, or I mean in these effervescents, and then 2 grams of taurine. This will feel pretty good. Oh, wait. And then, of course, the 10 milligrams of Yohimbe extract, which is 6% Yohimbe. And so similar kind of kick that you have adding to EuphoriQ V2, they're taking caffeine and adding a little extra Yohimbe here. So EFF'N Energy, yeah, I want some of this. I got to get me some over to GNC. So which one do you have? Do you have a red?
So I got all 3.
That's what I'm talking about right now. Yeah, EFF'N Energy.
Your EFF'N Energy, your EFF'N Cut, and then EFF'N Hydrate right there. And then what I'm going to do is, so I've got the EFF'N Cut right here.
Cool.
So it's going to come in these sachets.
And you'll have to watch on YouTube if you want to see this.
And so right here, I'm going to just pour, just so you can get an example of these little beadlets. But you're going to see this isn't straight powder.
Yeah, right. You can hear them going in too.
Beads. So, they're relatively small. But when you drop these into solution, you're just going to start to see that effervescent effect, and they're going to start to bubble. What I've been doing, again, just sitting at a desk, I will literally just start consuming them like that. We're recommending to mix them in solution because there is some, because of the sodium bicarb and that effervescent effect, it naturally causes some foaming. So I would just say, if you're going to do it, just know that that's going to happen. And you might not want to take a full serving at once, but if you may break it out into sort of 2 shots at it, I'd say it's probably more manageable. But it's definitely safer than dry scooping.
I like it. Do you need to drink water afterwards, or is it kind of your?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I would recommend hydrating, and naturally, I would imagine people would, right? But then that in that case, you might be consuming, for those who might be consuming an amino acid product or something while they're training, or more of an intra. You could take this ahead of it, or what I like to think is with the hydration product for sure. Absolutely, make sure you drink some water with it as well.
Yeah. So about how long does it take? So when you put it in water, how long does it take for it to?
So it takes, depending on the formulation, I'd say it takes about a minute and 20 seconds.
All right. And do you have to wait that long, or can you just? Or
you could start consuming it. It just means the last couple sips will be slightly more concentrated.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
If you want pure, as a purist, if we want even distribution of all the raw materials and the flavor throughout, that volume of water, you would wait patiently.
Okay. I'm not waiting that long for the first sip, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, but awesome. You'll see when you look at it though, sometimes it's and maybe that's the first time. The first time you're gonna wait, and the next time around. But I will say this: often you mix something and you don't realize before you sip on it, it's been like a minute. Right? You might mix it, let it sit.
Cool. And then so you mentioned the hydrate. You have Synactive in here, huh? Oh, there it is. Okay, I was trying to find it on the label. It is in there. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's in there. This one is in Nutrition Facts.
Yeah.
So that's probably the main difference why you see it in the other ingredients. But it is in there in addition to the electrolytes and the vitamins.
Can you explain the reason why you put it in a Nutrition Facts panel for everyone?
So this gets a little bit more from a regulatory perspective. Right. Typically, if you're going to start talking about hydration and hydration claims, you should be looking at a Nutrition Facts type of concept. So it's a bit of the nuance when you get from a regulatory perspective versus a dietary supplement. So if you're going to do that, I'd say it's more compliant to do it this way.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And this is the side of the box here. I'm on GNC. Welcome to the EFF'N future.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with this one. Right, it was leaning in, it's being bold. This is a quick dissolve novel technology. right? That we think is, consumers are going to enjoy. So that's it's the future, right?
Yeah. I forget if this was on a podcast or if it was just on a phone call with a company. We're talking to some European people, and I guess effervescent technology is massive in Europe. And for whatever reason, in America, it just hasn't yet taken back off or anything. And I think people will enjoy this. So I'm kind of curious to see how it goes. But I sometimes, to me, it's interesting how different cultures just, like certain things like this, more than others. And there's no really... It doesn't seem like there'd be any rhyme or reason to Europeans liking effervescent more than not. But.
Yeah.
I think the convenience factor might be a thing for America because a lot of Americans really just don't like mixing up things. I'm excited to just throw this stuff in my mouth and kind of consume it, like in the same way that like I prefer energy drinks over pre-workout mixing and protein RTDs over mixing proteins. I like the little sachets are really convenient for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And that's where I was just thinking about even like transport, right? And the other thing is there's no mess when you do it, right? Whenever you're mixing powder, doesn't matter where you're doing it, there's going to be some residue, something left. You just don't experience that with this.
Very cool. Okay. And the other thing you've been doing, obviously you have a whole page. You have 3 main peptide products right now. It all started with Peptide 185, and then we got into Creatine Peptide 447 and Recovery Peptide 144. In the show notes, I can link to our articles talking about that stuff. Seems like you're not backing down on the whole, like taking the peptide trend and turning it into some pretty cool supplements. Do you have more coming?
We do. So I'm, extremely proud of what we've been doing. We are leading the way with oral, bioavailable, safe, compliant, non-injectable supplement peptide forms. So a bit of a mouthful, but it's really important that I say that, just given the trend. And peptides are a really, really powerful pathway in terms of how they operate, right? So there's no surprise why people are talking about them, whether it's, some of the early adopters, the biohackers, but for the most part, people are out there talking about the injectable types of forms, these forms that are really in a gray area that are experimental, that just not compliant, from a supplement format. And, the way we were thinking about it was, well, we know peptides are powerful. And we do. We believe this is the future, and I strongly believe that. And we brought our muscle peptide 185 to market first, an exclusive. And what makes that novel is the fact that you've got a very specific transporter, and that's what it's important to really talk about peptides, right? Like what they are, and they're not only they're just like these amino acids bonded. Bonded amino acids, when you break down a protein, so you have these chains of amino acids, but they're also signaling molecules, and really powerful signaling molecules that will have these specific transporters, so they get absorbed really quick and intact, and then have a specific signal and response for your body. So in the case of muscle peptide 185, it's triggering, your master switch for anabolism and protein synthesis, right? Through the, the mTORC1 pathway. And then that leads to essentially downstream effect, increasing strength, increasing muscle growth. So we started there, and we're definitely not stopping there. We've got 2 additional products that have just launched. So you can find these specialty retailers like GNC and Vitamin Shop, of course, online as well. So we've got our Creatine Peptide 447, and then we got our Recovery Peptide 144. And there's more coming, but we were looking at it as an entire stack. And what are the other really important signals? So with Creatine Peptides, we're talking about the ATP pathway, right? Activating that, you've got, you're getting, it's a creatine, overall creatine peptide complex. So you're getting creatine monohydrate. It is, in this case, weakly bonded to these whey peptides, and that allows for better absorption, solubility, and greater uptake. But then again, you still have the most powerful and widely studied form of creatine monohydrate in there to provide, all the benefits of creatine, right? In terms of power, muscle, and even cognition today. And then we've got our Recovery 144, and this is a combination of the Peptistrong. So this is the AI discovered peptide that was derived from fava bean, right? Looking at the whole universe of peptides and then finding sort of this ideal sequence of amino acids and peptides that could provide a really powerful effect for strength, for recovery. But they also found some really interesting data that when it was combined with something like HMB, there was a synergistic effect for preventing muscle breakdown. So in our product, we've got the combination of the two, which is the Peptistrong peptides as well as HMB. And this stack, this is really sort of the ultimate stack. And when we were thinking about this, in terms of helping people, put together this sort of stack and routine of supplements, it's like you want to have something to turn on the signal, right? For muscle protein synthesis, you want to have something that shuts it off. And then on top of that, if you can activate the ATP, this is the ideal stack for, enhancing, performance gains. So that's the latest and greatest on the peptide front. We've got 2 more coming later this year, different need states. So get ready for that, but just know that they'll be around body composition as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. So yeah, that's what I like to explain with Peptistrong. It's a fava bean extract. It's 2.4. And by the way, the AI discovery, this is all before like ChatGPT. They were using ChatGPT to do this, but they can explain their own story. They have their whole setup well beyond all that. So anyway, it's 2.4 grams of fava bean extract, standardized for the peptide networks that they found inside with, that was discovered with AI. So it's more than just 2.4 grams of protein. It's really the signaling. Like we'll take the amino acids and the protein from it. Sure, add it to your macros if you want. But that's not why you're taking it. You're not taking it for the 2.5 grams of protein. You're taking it for the signaling itself. And that's where it's important to distinguish between, just like some basic amino acid bonds, because there's lots of things can be considered peptides, and then an actual signaling molecule that is kind of like getting the body to do some extra stuff or amplifying the response. And that's what we have with a Peptistrong. So really cool. That's part of my stack for when I am getting after it and going to be way sore, or if I am also not getting after it and don't want to like lose more muscle than I need to already. Like that's one of their studies was they put people in a leg cast and an immobilization type study and watch them not atrophy as badly and recover better thanks to this peptide network inside that is actually signaling to the body, hey, don't lose your muscle. So sometimes we need a little bit of help, and that's what these peptides are best for.
Yeah, such a good point. And although it's AI discovered, it's clinically validated, right? And like that's an important step, right? That they all that science that you just emphasize, and it's the specific amino acids. To your point, like you can't just because there's a fava bean protein out there, and again, that'll have benefits in terms of nutritional benefits in terms of protein and overall recovery, but this is much more precise than that. Right. This is about, the signaling, but also just the ability to be absorbed intact and remain bioactive. That's also a critical part to where you then see that efficacy and the science that were shown in those clinical studies.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think this is it's proof to what we were getting back to with the restructuring and stuff that brands that are really in trouble aren't doing all this stuff. So you have a lot of innovation, new stuff coming, new stuff that's just already come out, and a lot happening. You're clearly going to shows and everything. Are you traveling a lot yourself?
I am, yeah. So I'll definitely personally be at Olympia as well as at Supply Side. And then we've got members with other people from our team. And then some of our members are also getting out to the Dubai Muscle Show. It was a lot to do in October, so I couldn't do all 3 as much as I wanted to. But yeah, like to your point, the innovation is coming. We're not going to be slowing down. The way we look at this is like, if there's new science, if there's new innovation, we want to get it out there. And when possible, you're going to see that we're we're going to be there first. I was also just thinking, about, your comments on citrulline, right, earlier. And we got something on that front too, from an innovation perspective. So, we talked about the high dose, right? Like a lot of people just keep taking more and more. And I think, Ben, you commented on the adult dose versus the, more useful dose, which was interesting. I hadn't heard that before.
I think it was just more of like a discrimination against smaller doses. That's for small people.
Yeah.
But there's been an arms race, to your point. Like, and if you look at it, like above like 8, 10, possibly grams, like you get limited returns.
Yeah. And, we got another innovation that we've got coming out, which is it has launched, our stacked pre-workout. So this is our newest pre-workout. And, we want to have something for everyone from a pre-workout perspective, right? Like we've got EuphoriQ. It's doing its thing from a paraxanthine perspective. But we also know that, of course, people are going to be looking for, caffeine as well. But the key differentiator here is that we use citrulline HCl. So it's a hydrochloride form. This is a trademark material known as Hydronox. And it's got really, really interesting data. So you only need 2 grams of this. So it's highly concentrated. And they've got human clinical research showing its ability that it can convert to arginine significantly faster. And then from there, convert to nitric oxide, the key measure. But it was shown to be more effective than a powerful dose of a larger dose of 6 grams of citrulline in terms of its ability to increase arginine and increase the citrulline arginine to ratio and just markers of nitric oxide. So, here it was, okay, what's the next? Again, not just having to throw more at it, but what's new out there that can lead to better results and not have to just keep increasing the dose, but still showing the efficacy, right? That is just as effective, which is very, very interesting. Haven't seen that yet. And then over and above that, we also added in nitrates in here in the form of betaine nitrates. So you are leveraging both pathways. So you still get, a really good pump and then a really, impressive, stim complex as well.
I love that product so much that, it's well known in our community that I hate the flavor grape. But I drink your grape because that product is so enjoyable. Like, it really improves my experience on any workout I throw at it.
Oh, amazing. No, thanks for that feedback. And it's always nice to hear that because it's like, we sweat every detail, right? It really is. And if you look at the packaging and you definitely see a sort of a theme, depending on the products, it's about, the science, it's about the transparency, it's about the trust in what you're getting, even to the point where you can see how much is in there, right? And when you're running out as well. So it's another benefit.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting evolution of that line because the other 3 products are kind of interesting because you kind of want to use a bunch of them together. They're kind of like little Venn diagrams where there's different reasons why, there's not one of those where I just want to use that. I kind of want to use the stack of all of them together. The creatine product, you guys have 6 different creatine SKUs that I could choose from. That one I might be able to swap, but the other ones are kind of interesting. But that stacked pre could really live on its own. It really could be a standalone on its own, which is really cool. It delivers a bunch of really interesting things, and it's been pretty much universally appreciated, which I really like. I think it was one of the few products this year that everyone agreed was impactful and different.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, and. That is the way we're thinking about it. It's just, I think what we've seen is, some people might initially, especially if they're either starting up, perhaps budgeting to some extent, may start with one product, but typically people are using multiple products to some extent, whether it's a creatine, a pre-workout, a protein, and, when we're designing this, every product is going to definitely have a benefit on its own. But if you have that stack, and you're so inclined to try that stack, there's phenomenal results. Like from the peptide stack, I love getting that feedback because we've been getting feedback from people that are, who aren't just recreationally trained. They're so focused and so consistent on their routine, training for years, and they're getting, they're setting personal bests across the board. And by the way, it's not just in the gym. So it's in the gym in terms of definitely strength benefits. But I've gotten messages from people they're tearing up, Strava while they're cycling and hitting their personal bests. So I mean, we love that, right? Like that's why we do this.
Yeah, I liked how you did the stack of the 3 different products, because like creatine everyone should be using, and that, like I said, that one you could use whatever monohydrate you want. But when you guys first came out with the Peptide 185, I was taking massive amounts of that with PeptiStrong, and I was seeing really cool benefits. And I was texting Eric like, dude, this is sick. I'm getting like, it was really great. But to put those 2 in one product is kind of like economically like hard for a lot of consumers. And some companies have done it, and I doubt they're selling the amount of these products that you are, because consumers can access these on their own and choose to stack them in the way they want to. Whereas opposed to that, if you were to put them together, the price point would be rather large, and it makes it hard for everyone to get access to it. In this way, they can kind of choose their own destiny with these products or stack them. And I also think you guys have a lot of retail experience, and a lot of people don't think about this, but once you sell this stuff into a retailer, the fact of the matter is that they're going to be stacked with other companies. So like you guys have a really good stackability where you can play nice with other people on the shelf and still kind of be part of that basket building for consumers. That's not something we typically talk about because we're talking with one brand today, but it kind of is the nature of it. I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah. Like, I mean, naturally, people are going to gravitate towards, certain brands that they like and they've used for years. And, if we can be incorporated to their stack or vice versa, again, we've designed it, a customized stack, but that's just how consumer behavior is, right? They're going to try different things and lean towards. So, we just hope that, we're part of that. And I think when consumers see innovation and see something new, it's all the more reason for them to want to try it, right? And try something, different. But, with that, we're also innovating in even just other key categories like amino acids, proteins, think about to the conversation earlier on, in our discussion about protein and, how are we helping people get more from their proteins? It's what we used to think about protein and that there was like a cap to how much you consume. We know now that's not true. Right. Like, you just absorb it slower, right? Like that's essentially what happens. So there's no reason why you wouldn't want to take more protein and get better absorption of your protein. So, ultimately we got our other 2 innovations, the plasma whey and our plasma BCAAs. And it was just that. It was looking at, and by the way, these are more expensive ways of doing this. So, but it was like, okay, there is definitely a potential benefit, right? If people can put on more lean gains, get better absorption, so like the proteins, like more than 100% more bioavailable, for example, and the plasma BCA data shows it's like 2.x more bioavailable. So if people are getting these amino acids, which peptides are not, hormone therapy or not, you need amino acids in circulation, right? It doesn't matter, right? So that's the way we think about it in innovating with just some of the most novel technologies on that front.
Awesome. You guys,
there we go.
You've given us so much today, Raza. Like, there's just like so much. I this is like a long form podcast that people will listen to, but like I always think like minute clips here, and like there have been so many great moments. And so thank you from the social media manager perspective. But it's good to see you guys still doing well. What you said earlier about like offering exciting new things to people, I know that a lot of people get excited by this stuff. So we appreciate you guys always like pushing the pace on innovation. It's appreciated by us nerds for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for having me. Always love talking shop with you two, and thanks for fighting the good fight and getting the word out there and allowing us to kind of showcase everything that we're working on and where we go from here.
Yeah, appreciate it. In the show notes, we will have obviously MuscleTech's easy to find. We'll have your LinkedIn in the at the bottom of the show notes as well, and this will be a good one. So nearly an hour and a half. Thank you so much, Raza.
Thanks, gents. Appreciate it.